Hey scholars, we're going to start working on the third part of the project. Third part of the project is factoring trinomials. This is the last thing we did while we were in class together. I'm going to go through 4 examples with you, going from easier to more difficult at the bottom. So for number 1, again, x squared, there's only one way we can get an x squared, and that's by multiplying an x by an x. So as we're solving these again, this is where we're going to come in with the parentheses. So in order to get x squared, there has to be an x times an x. Now the number we're going to look at here is an 8, and it's a positive 8. So we know that these two numbers, whatever they happen to be, have to be multiplied together to get 8. So we're going to write down all the factors of numbers that go into 8. And those numbers would be 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Those are the numbers we need. Now, since this has to be positive, that means this has to be positive. So to get to a positive, you can multiply a positive by a positive or a negative by a negative. How do we know what we need? Well, when we're combining our like terms here, we need a positive 6. So we need both to be positive. So that means both of our numbers will be positive, and when we're adding, 1 plus 8 is going to give us 9, 2 plus 4 is going to give us 6. That's the combination we need because we need a positive 6. So with our 2 and our 4, we're going to put both those in since they're both positive. So this is going to be a plus 2, and this will be a positive 4. So as you're factoring x squared plus 6x plus 8, the answer would be x plus 2 in one set of parentheses and x plus 4 in the other. When we come down to example 2, now notice that both numbers are negative. We have a negative x, and a reminder that there's an imaginary 1 that's here. There's no number in front, and we have a negative 12. So we're going to start the problem the same way. We're going to put our parentheses here and here. Again, it's x squared, so the only way to get to x squared is going to be an x times an x. Now the number we need is 12, but it's going to be a negative 12, which we'll deal with in a moment. We need a negative 12. So we're still going to write down our factors of 12. Our factors of 12 are going to be 1 and 12. We're going to get 2 and 6, and we're going to get 3 and 4. Now it has to be negative, which means one of these numbers has to be negative and the other one has to be positive. How do we know which one it is? Well, again, when we come in and we're combining our like terms here, it has to be a negative 1. So since it's negative, that means when we combine it has to be negative. And if it has to be negative, that means our bigger number has to be negative, the smaller one has to be positive. The bigger one has to be negative, the smaller positive. The bigger number has to be negative, the smaller positive. Now when we do our math, we need negative 1 as our answer. A positive 1 minus 12 is going to give us negative 11. That's not what we want. 2 minus 6 is going to give us negative 4. That's not what we want. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. That's again what we want is negative 1, which means this is the combination that we need. That 3 is positive, so we're putting in a plus 3, and that 4 is negative, so we're going to put in a minus 4. So the answer to that one, x squared minus x minus 12, is going to be x plus 3 in parentheses and x minus 4 in parentheses. Now when we get down to our last 2 examples, it's going to become a bit more challenging. This first one here, now we no longer have, and there's supposed to be a square there and a square there, so I apologize for missing that. This is going to be the slide and divide. When you have a number now in front, we didn't have a number in front before, and there's no common factor like there's going to be here because 2 is going to go in, we're going to do what I call the slide and divide. So that means the 2 now is being multiplied by the negative 28, and 2 times 28 is going to give us 56. So now what we need to do is we need to find the factors of 56. And it will eventually be negative because this is negative here. So our factors of 56 will be 1 and 56. We're going to get 2 and 28. And the other numbers that are going to go in are going to be 4 and 14. And then the other factors are 7 and 8. This 56 again is negative, meaning one of these has to be negative and one has to be positive. Just like before, since this is negative, and again we can pretend that there's a negative 1 there, since that's negative, that means our bigger number has to be negative. So that means this bigger number all have to be negative, which means this smaller number has to be positive. And then the answer that we need is a negative 1. So when we come and look at all these, here's going to be the negative 1 because 7 minus 8 is going to be negative 1. So that's the combination that we need. So as we come back now, we have our parentheses. We know an x has to go here. We know an x has to go here. Our combination was a positive 7 and a negative 8. Now, in the beginning of the problem, we multiplied everything by 2, which means now we really have to divide everything by 2. So I would divide by 2 here, I would divide by 2 here. 7 doesn't divide by 2 at all. So this 2 is going to slide back up top. And so now this answer is going to be 2x plus 7. We come to the next one. 2 does go into 8. It's going to go in 4 times. So this parenthesis is going to be x minus 4. So the final answer to how we factor this one, 2x squared minus x minus 28, is 2x plus 7 in parentheses, and in the other parentheses we're going to have x minus 4. The last problem that we're going to look at is this one, and this one also has a number in front, which is also a 2, but here we have a common factor because I can take a 2 out from 2, a 2 out from 20, and a 2 out from 50. So when we do that now, the 2's coming to the outside, and I'm going to have x squared left. When I take a 2 out from 20, that's going to give us 10. And when we take a 2 out of 50, that's going to give us 25. So there's the problem that we have now. We factor out the 2. So now I'm just going to focus on the parenthesis, and now this is very similar to the problems we had in the beginning. So now the number that we need is 25. So as we find the factors of 25, the factors of 25 will be 1 and 25, and 5 and 5. Now as we're looking again, we need, and this should be an x, and that should be an x. Sorry, I left that part out. We need positive 10. Positive 10 is the number that we need. It has to be positive 25, so both numbers are positive. So when we add these up, that's going to give us 26. That's not what we want. 5 and 5 is going to give us 10. That is what we want, so we need a plus 5 and plus 5. So as we're coming again, we know we have our parentheses. I'm going to have an x plus 5, x plus 5. And that would be the answer to that one. I have a 2 on the outside, so I'm going to keep it on the outside over here. So when you factor 2x squared plus 20x plus 50, our final answer would be 2 parenthesis x plus 5 and parenthesis x plus 5. That is how we factor our trinomials. Hopefully you remember this. Hopefully it wasn't too difficult. If it was, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to help. Thanks.